This is Sky Moore, and this segment is called Money In, Money Out, and Control. Every transaction that you're faced with, no matter how complex, can be broken down and analyzed into three components if you think about money in, money out, and control. And all you have to do is, when you hear a chaotic transaction, is simply ask the person, slow down, and let's go through the steps. Tell me about money in. And here's the questions that you ask on money in. Who is putting money in? Or is it the investors? Is it you? Is it some third party? So that's your first question. How much are they putting in? Is there a cap? Who decides how much they're putting in? Is there is there a limit on how much they're putting in? When are they putting it in? Are they putting it in up front? Is it going to be on call? Are there notes? And any time that there's deferred payments that aren't being paid on closing, the next question is, how do you enforce that? What happens if the person doesn't pay? Do you sue them? Do you collect on a note? Do you get to foreclose on their interest? And so those are the fundamental questions that you ask on money in. So now that, and the final question you always ask is, what if you need more? Because I will tell you that most films lose money, they go over budget, and you better have an answer to that question. Maybe it's, I get to go out and raise more money from other people and dilute the first people, or maybe it's, I get to go back to the first people and require them to put in more, but you have to have an answer to this question, what if you need more? So that's money in. Money out. Whenever I ask people what's money out, they always start with, well, the profits are split 50-50. That's the last part of the waterfall. Here's the questions that you need to ask for money out. Question one, is somebody getting compensation? Are they getting a salary, a management fee, a producer fee? That's a money out question. So that's step one. Step two, are there tax distributions? Are we making distributions to let people to pay their taxes on the income from this? That's a money out question. So compensation, tax distributions. Third, are we paying interest or a preferred return? Are we paying interest to a lender? Are we paying a preferred return on equity? Something before that we even return capital. Sometimes it's like floating interest rate on debt, or maybe it's some 5% preferred return on capital. Next, are we repaying capital? And if we are repaying capital, when are we repaying capital? Are we paying it up front, or are we paying it on some capital event, sale or liquidation? And then finally you get to that last level of profits. And how are profits being split? Is it 50-50? Who's getting it? And so you always break down money out into those five categories: compensation, tax distributions, preferred return, return of capital, and share of profits. And then finally you ask the question of control. Who has control? That is, who, and the way you think of control, the way you should think of it is, somebody has what I will call residual control, general control, and somebody else might have some veto rights. What you don't want to do is try to say, well, someone has creative control and someone has business control, because that overlaps and you'll end up fighting about who buys red pencils, because that's both a creative and a financial issue. So the way you should always approach it is, somebody has control overall, except a limited subset of rights that somebody has the right to approve. Now, in a perfect world, you are the one with residual control and somebody else has that small veto rights. If you're the one with the small veto rights, the two things that you must look out for always is, one is transactions between the company or the entity and whoever has residual control and their affiliates. You have to look out for self-dealing, paying massive compensation to whoever has control, or their relatives, their affiliates. So you've got to look out for self-dealing transactions. And the second thing you must look out for is dilution. Whoever has control, you have to look out for their ability to bring in new financiers that dilutes you. You thought you had 50% of the profits and you end up with 10%. So you've got to have a protection to either stop that or to be able to match it. And that's called a preemptive right, so that if the Whoever has control goes to raise more financing. You should have the right to match it or block it. Those are the two things that you should always look out for if you're the one with just the veto rights. Or another paradigm for control is joint control. That is, two people and it takes their unanimous consent to do anything. That's a veto right. That's another paradigm of control, and that's great. That is, I would much rather have that than a limited subset of approval rights, because I'd rather lock up the other person if I can than to have just those limited rights. And again, every transaction, if you break it down, think through money in, money out, and control. You can analyze every transaction that way. This is Sky Moore signing off for this segment. I hope you tune in to the next one.